Hey Trojans, this is Jeff. It is Saturday. It is Halloween. I am going to put my little screen thing on. It's not. I think it's not really an avatar. It's just we miss you. Um, okay, so you can see that if you decided to watch this, it's basic concepts for multi-tiered systems of support or support systems. And the example I'm going to use is basically school attendance. And I'm going to try to whip through this in about 12 minutes. And I think the first thing I want to say is that multi-tiered support systems, they are a participation sport. It's amazing how many hands are involved with a strong, healthy MTSS. And schools have been very encouraged by the state. Especially the last couple of years, equity's been such a big, robust push out from the state, and MTSS is one way we assure that. And I'm going to try to show you why. I'm not really going to speak so much to equity; it's kind of laced into it. But I'm going to take you through the three tiers, and I'm going to kind of keep most of it at tier one, which is where most of us are in our practices. I am the administrator who oversees tier one. Tier two is going to be more Bobby. It's been Deanna in the past. It's Bobby now. He's got a very strong background in MTSS as an intervention specialist. And Jeanette's going to help him with that too. And she has a lot of experience with PBIS and MTSS. And then Lori is our tier three specialist. And with her special education background, she's the perfect fit for that because that's where things get most intense and most frequent in terms of the supports. So here we go. All right, I think we're going. Okay, here's our why. We want 100% graduation. You can see over the last 4 years, our graduation rate has continued to climb. This last spring, I put a little asterisk there. I think everyone knows why it's there, but you know what? That's ours. We own it. And we know the kids were given quite a bit of grace on that. But even so, we had estimated our kids would be probably in the low 80s, 82, 83%. And it gave them a little bit of bump. The thing that I think is encouraging is by the time those kids who are still with us from that cohort, we're probably going to be around 92%, which is the fifth year graduation rate. I'm pretty excited about. The 2019, you can see 2 years ago, they graduated at about 79.5%. And their fifth year graduation rate came out at about 83%. I just saw the data the other day, so that's exciting. About 21 kids kind of came through as fifth year seniors. And you know what? Till they turn 21, they can hang out with us and keep working on credits. Our current cohorts are the class of 21, 22, 23, and 24. And I'm just here to tell you, there is no plan B. We have a plan A, and that's MTSS. And the reason we do that is we want to make sure that no kids fall through the cracks. And here we go. You guys have all seen the world famous pyramid. And you can see it can be applied to academics, behavior, attendance, and SEL work. I guess traditionally it's usually academics and behavior. I think it really found its way into education through behavior, through PBIS. It was stolen from the medical world, the medical field. I think it's just a way of making triage look a little bit more systemic. So tier one is universal. Those are things that all students should get. Tier two are targeted, and that's some students. And then the most intensive is tier three, and that's a few. And I would say that what's going on right now with distance learning and the way that we are trying to support families who are kind of, I guess you'd say, are struggling the most might be in that tier three. We probably have about 40 or 50 families. I know we had about 60 kids in that tier, kids that just were not connecting. And if you look at about 1,750 kids, you can do the math, and it's pretty much a smaller group. Okay, so here's what we're looking for. Like I said, we're going to use ACT as our model, and ACT is all about attendance and engagement. And what the state says is we have kids engaging and attending 95 to 100% of the time, they'd be considered on track with attendance. If they're 90 to 95%, those are the kids we got to start saying, okay, they're starting to miss a little bit. We got to keep our eyes on them. And the kids that are showing up less than 9 out of 10 days, every 2 weeks, they would be considered at risk by the state. Now, that doesn't mean the students are at risk. That's just a standard they go by. So what else might we apply to this standard? Question one would be, how was a student doing in school? If they're passing with a C or better, I would just say monitor as part of the whole class. It's not that big of a deal, unless they're trying to get an A or B, of course, and that would be another type of intervention. But more than likely, the student would be coming to the teacher. A next way to look at it would be a student who's passing with a C minus or a D. Yeah, you may want to monitor them more regularly. I would say you should be checking grades every 2 weeks. And for kids like that, you may want to be checking it every week. If they're missing things, just more reminders to them, maybe an email in this world, because you can't see them face to face, but just a little bit more interventions. If students are failing, we want to monitor and intervene more regularly, hopefully before they get to that point. Try to determine, this is really important, if the student can't do the work or if they won't do the work, because that's going to decide, you know, your approach. That's why it's so important in some of the core classes that we're doing benchmarking, kind of the diagnostic testing at the start of each year, each semester, to see what the kids really are. Because if they have, you know, pretty decent skills and they just aren't performing work, those are kids who just won't do it. And that'd be more of a motivational or inspirational mindset. Kids that have lower scores, it might be a can't situation. So that's something you want to keep in mind if you aren't already doing that. The student who never shows up and is not engaged, we want to reach out to the family, email or phone, at least 2 attempts. You guys have been working on that. Want to try to do that in the early going as much as possible. Notify the counselor to see if they have any backstory. Sometimes you can find some ahas, and that helps you decide on your next methodology as you're working with a kiddo. Student continues to fail and or never engages. We want to refer them to the tier 2, which is the ACT team. And we're working on what that's going to look like for Q2 right now. What we've told teachers to do is go ahead and email counselors, and that's been working, but we want to try to clean that up a little bit. But for until you are different, just keep emailing counselors. Tier 1, it's for all. Every student is assured basic or universal levels of support across the school campus. So these would be things such as credit attainment opportunity and access. And we know we have, when I think of access, I always think of special education and our English learners. And we got to make sure we make things accessible for them. We can't just use time and a space. That works for most students, where you have time set aside, you have space, and you have content. But for the other kids who might need a little bit extra support, we got to make sure we give that to them. And that's all part of tier 1. Social emotional supports, that's just the human being that you are, that you bring to class each day as their teacher. And then of course we have Capturing Kids' Hearts, very much an SEL program. Every student in our school gets that. Behavior expectations, that's part of our PBIS. The way we use Troy, we didn't get to do it so much until we're in brick and mortar, but you know, you guys got to do social contracts, and that seems to be carrying you through for distance learning. Attendance expectations, that's something we definitely want to always be talking to our kids about. Of course, they're better when they're in class versus if they have to miss class. Tier 1, first responders, those who are providing the supports in the basic or universal setting. And this is where an early warning intervention system or response to intervention kicks in. Question is, how are all students responding to your tier 1? Whether you're giving them X, Y, or Z, how are all the kids responding to that? And this would be considered core instruction, your direct instruction, the way you facilitate things. When you get them into breakout rooms, how successful are they with the success criteria towards your learning targets? And what we try to shoot for our kids that are showing up regularly, you know, moderately at risk or on track, we want to see at least 80% success kids, you know, getting C's or better. If it's lower than that, we really as practitioners need to look at our practices and say, what else could I be doing to differentiate from maybe some of the kids that aren't finding success? So that's just, you know, a methodology you want to think about. This is where progress monitoring practices or early warning intervention systems are vital. And I would say one of the good models in our school are our 9th grade houses. I think our resource department is starting to work on an early warning intervention system model. I think they're just using the same one. I can't remember the name of the developers of it. There's about 3 people involved with it, but I've been using the same one since I did some work back in Sumner a few years back. But it's a great way just to keep track of kids, and it gets a few people really paying attention to a group of kids. And if you're a teacher only teaching the same content area all by yourself, you're kind of on your own, but you still want to do a progress monitoring. So you can make sure that your kids have an 80% success or better in your core intervention, and then you have some answers for those kids that would be considered kind of low interventions, but they're kind of, you take care of that within your classroom. So that's kind of the all hands on deck standpoint. It's everybody. And it's usually teachers, those who are providing the supports in the basic or universal setting. Try different things. Try reteaching, try reviewing, try motivating, try inspiring, differentiate, appeal to them, incentivize, whatever you got to do within reason, of course. Reach out for ideas and other practices. And if it's still not working, and the student is still, failing class for whatever reason, that's when we want to do referrals for some help with Tier 2. And for right now, I think most of the kids that are in that boat are the kids that just aren't showing up. And that's why we chose to use ACT as our example here. So we want to let the ACT team know. And right now, we've told folks to email the counselors. We're going to stick with that until we hear different. But anyway, what Tier 2 looks like in a regular setting, counselors or other designated staff could be doing check and connects with the kids. It might be Mary down in the reset room. It might be a secretary. It might be an administrator. But they're just checking in on the kids. And sometimes that's a lot of what our kids just need, is just that extra person just kind of saying, I believe in you, and I'm taking interest in you. And we do a lot of that around our school. Sometimes formally, sometimes informally. Tier 3 is for a few, and this looks more like a check-in, check-out, where I might have a regular visitation with a student. They're coming to me, I'm going to them, or a combination of. It works really well in brick and mortar. I love doing these because I can catch kids in the hallways. I can walk with them for a minute or two, and it can be very informal. It can also be very formal. We're using a tracking sheet, and we're using points as motivation, and sometimes there's prizes to win at the end. Like sometimes I've let some kids walk over to the 76 station to go buy something at lunch, because you know what? It's getting them to go to class. And those are little side bets I make with kids. But eventually what happens, they start to realize they can do it. So Unleash the Brilliance. They're a group that's doing interventions with families. We have the mobile unit that's doing home visitations in this world. And we're securing resources and making a connection with families. So those are some of the Tier 3s. So anyway, I just wanted to bring this to light, that we are all on an MTSS system, or MTSS, and we want to continue to get better at it. We don't really talk about it in those terms because it's just too big and it's too, I guess, conceptual, instead of just saying, here's exactly what I need to do. So it's really best if when we talk about the specific practices we're using, but at least this gives you a little bit more of the bigger picture. All right, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. I'm going to go back out and finish raking my leaves. Have a great day, folks.